Good evening. Tonight we bring you two stories at the heart of global politics and economics. In the first segment, we turn to Washington and Kabul, where US President Donald Trump's demand that the Taliban hand over Bagram airfield has stirred confusion, alarm and speculation about America's strategy in Afghanistan. In our second segment, we move to Buenos Aires, where President Javier Milei faces the monumental task of stabilizing Argentina's economy against a backdrop of deep political uncertainty and mounting market fears. I'm Ron Khassas, and this is In Focus. President Donald Trump has escalated a demand that has puzzled observers since the start of this second term. He wants the Taliban to hand back Bagram airfield to the United States. Once a hub of U.S. military operations in Afghanistan, Bagram now sits firmly under Taliban control. Trump sets a blunt warning on Truth Social, declaring that bad things are going to happen if the demand isn't met. But the Taliban immediately rejected the request from them. The presence of foreign forces on Afghanistan soil is a red line, no matter the concessions they have made elsewhere. Critics argue that Trump's timing couldn't be worse. U.S. envoys are in sensitive talks with the Taliban over hostage releases, and this fiery rhetoric risks undermining one of an administration's most delicate policy priorities. Trump claims the push is about countering China, citing Bagram's proximity to Chinese nuclear sites, yet analysts say a return of U.S. forces would inflame tensions with Beijing while offering little strategic gain. The real motivation may be counter-terrorism. The Islamic State branch remains a rising threat, and Trump may be Bagram as a launch pad for monitoring ISK operations. Still, options already exist for intelligence channels to reopening an embassy that could carry far fewer risks. With no sign of Taliban cooperation and fears that Washington could pursue risky unilateral actions, Trump's fixation on Bagram may prove costly, political and strategical. Joining us now is Justin Thomas Russell, Executive Director of the Global Foreign Policy Center, to unpack the implications of this demand and its potential consequences for U.S. policy in Afghanistan and beyond. Justin, a very good day and a warm welcome to our program. Let me start with the basics. Why do you think Trump has fixed on Bagram airfield, and how does it fit into his broader foreign policy approach?
Well, it's good to see you again, Rana, as always.
Always a pleasure, sir.
There's no real reason for this, and nobody can figure it out. I mean, people in foreign policy circles, people in military strategy circles, it doesn't make any sense. When Trump was asked about it, his response was, they need stuff from us, and we just want it back. That's not a reason to go back into a very strategically unsecure environment. And it's, if this is a get back at Biden thing, that doesn't make sense. There's no rhyme or reason to this, and it baffles even some of the most intelligent foreign policy and national security analysts that I've talked to in Washington.
Okay, the Taliban called Bagram a red line. Do you see any convincible scenario in which they would hand it over to the United States? And I think, sir, that it's impossible, but I just want to know your take, sir.
Is there a situation that the Taliban, who runs the Afghan central government out of Kabul now, would give up Bagram Air Base back to the U.S.? The simple answer is no. But let me stress this. There is one caveat to that. The Afghan government has been striving to bring economic investment in. They are looking to, as their foreign ministry put it several weeks ago, they are looking to start negotiations to bring economic ties back to Afghanistan. The Afghan economy is falling into ruin, and it's falling on a daily basis. The only possible way is
to make things clearer, the United States is gonna make negotiations with Afghanistan again, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only possible way, is a financial return for it. As long as the Afghan economy is going down, the Afghan needs money and investment and economic partnerships. Giving Bagram back to the U.S. means that the U.S. Department of Defense would probably put some money into rebuilding, recreating some infrastructure, and hiring some local some local employees. That brings money back in the economy, which is desperately needed. That is the only possible way we see this as possibly going down. And again, let me be clear. I give that maybe a 5 to 10% chance of happening. There's just no logic to this at all.
Sir, do you see that this is a win-win situation from your own perspective?
For who? Is it a win-win for anybody? No. In fact, I think it's a lose-lose.
Afghanistan, at least, if it needs money from the United States?
No, it doesn't.
What is the status of the Taliban in the midst of this?
No, it's a lose-lose for everybody. It's a loser deal
for everybody. Okay, Trump justified the demand by citing proximity to Chinese nuclear facilities. Do you think this is a credible strategic rationale, or is it political theater, sir?
I think it's political theater. If you are trying to justify reclaiming Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, a country that has largely been hostile to the United States by a government that was once deemed a terrorist organization by the United States government, even under the Trump administration, you cannot justify saying, oh, well, we want to monitor Chinese nuclear weapons proliferation from Bagram Air Base. No, that's not how this works. They can sell that to somebody else. It's not going to work in the general discussions of foreign policy or national security.
Could this demand derail the ongoing the demand, of course, sir, of U.S. President Donald Trump's demand that the Taliban hand over Bagram airfield? Do you think this demand derail the ongoing U.S. Taliban negotiations on prisoner releases, which are seen as the administration's key Afghan priority?
Again, this is another foreign policy almost quagmire, Rana, that we're looking at from the Trump administration. It absolutely does not make logical sense for them to say, okay, we want to grab Bagram back, but we're going to put this into a time when we're dealing with sensitive hostage and prisoner release negotiations. Bottom line here is, number one, the U.S. doesn't have a whole lot of street credibility in Kabul, in with the Taliban. A majority of the negotiations that are going on are being done by our usual diplomatic negotiating partners, thus being Qatar, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE. We're not doing a lot of direct inside of Kabul. That being the case, focus on one and then maybe push the other, but to do it simultaneously is just muddying the waters in a situation that needs to be pretty crystal clear with a hostile government that really doesn't like us.
Mr. Russell, do you think on the ground is it okay and is it approved that U.S. government asks suddenly for a takeover of an airfield because he decided this, or for something else would be taken in the middle of negotiations, or that something or there are any exchanges that's gonna happen between both countries, whether minerals, whether money that's gonna be paid for Afghanistan? Do you think this is logical, sir, or is it ideological even?
Again, I cannot stress enough the fact that I don't think there's a real answer to this. Look, when a U.S. base is established, the U.S. has control over that base. It's basically ceding, as part of the agreement, the Afghan government would be ceding this land that Bagram Air Base sits on, and putting it under U.S. jurisdictional authority. The issue there is the Afghans don't want to cede back any land, not 1 inch of Afghan land, back to the United States, who they see as the infidel and an invader and an occupying force in Afghanistan.
Got your
I
point,
don't
sir.
think that.
Sir, if the United States were to attempt a military takeover of Bagram, what would the risks and consequences look like for American lives, Afghan civilians, and regional stability?
It would be a powder keg. You were talking about recreating, Donald Trump was talking about, and the reason why he says that he made the deal with the Taliban government to withdraw U.S. forces from Afghanistan was because he was tired of engaging in long-term wars. If he goes in to take back Bagram in a hostile invasion, which is basically what this would be, that would just start another long-term war. And that, not to mention the fact, the loss of American lives, the loss of innocent civilian lives in Afghanistan. On top of that, you're also talking about lighting a keg on a bastion of extremism which comes out of Afghanistan, and relighting that up again. The U.S. can't handle that, and it's not a risk that I would take.
In your view, sir, what alternative options could Washington pursue to monitor ISK and other threats without escalating tensions with the Taliban and China?
Well, I mean, for a country like the United States, which has the best intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities in the world,
does it still have the best, sir?
I would, yes. Yeah, absolutely. I would say that. I mean, just because of, questionable decisions made by different administrations doesn't mean that the technology and the career operators that are involved in intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance have changed a lot. We still have that best capability, and we continue to use that. We use Al Udeid Air Base, for example, is supposed to be our over-the-horizon base for the entire region for CENTCOM, which includes Afghanistan. So why would you want to take away from that unless there's some underlying tension between Doha and Washington that neither wants to talk about, which I don't know that to be the case. But again, why would you go back into the throat of the animal that's going to bite you by putting U.S. forces in harm's way just by their presence in Bagram, when you can do it from Al Udeid, Bahrain, or any of the other capabilities that we have? Even to the east of Afghanistan, we have Korea. We have South Korean bases. Again, this is more for dramatic effect. This is more for political drama than it is for anything else, because this is an administration that loves creating political drama.
True, sir. Finally, what does this episode tell us about Trump's second term foreign policy style? Impulsive gambit or calculated strategy, sir?
I mean, if we were to put it into one simple word, that word would be circus. It is a complete and total circus. There is no rhyme or reason. There is no logic. And on top of the fact, as we've seen just in the past 72 hours, the foreign policy of this administration can turn in any direction at any time based on the whim or the whining of the chief executive, President Trump. There's no way to predict where this is going to go, and that's why I use the word circus to describe this foreign policy.
Justin Thomas Russell, Executive Director of the Global Foreign Policy Center. I cannot thank you enough for always being with us and for your insights and informative knowledge on President Trump's Bagram demand and its wider implications. We appreciate your time and analysis, sir, so much. And we now turn from Afghanistan to South America, where Argentina is once again battling its economy demons under President Javier Milei. Argentina is once again at crossroads. President Javier Milei, who campaigned as a radical liberal outsider, now faces the daunting reality of stabilizing a nation mired in crisis. Inflation remains rampant, reserves are dwindling, and investors are spooked by erratic monetary policies and political uncertainty. Milei has scored some wins. His fiscal tightening has exceeded expectations, and strong U.S. backing has secured Argentina a new financial package. Yet markets remain unconvinced. The risk of a pendulum swing back to populism is real, especially after Milei's party suffered major losses in recent local elections. Investors fear the figures like Excel Kickoff, tied closely to Cristina Fernández, could make a comeback in 2027. The dilemma is stark. International support from Washington is critical, but it won't be enough. Argentina must push through credible reforms, a floating currency, transparent monetary policy, and congressional approval of long-term budgets. Equally vital is political coalition building, without which Milei risks governing in isolation. Absent these steps, Milei could join the long list of Argentine leaders who promised to banish economic demons, but instead left the country deeper in crisis. Joining us now is Tobias Belgrano, international affairs researcher, to discuss whether Argentina can break its cycle of crisis and what Milei must do to avoid becoming just another failed reformer. Tobias, welcome. And Argentina has been through repeated boom and bust cycles. What makes this current crisis unique compared to the past?
Well, this is a pretty new scenario, especially because of the swap Mr. Trump has promised to lend to the Argentinian government. Just to clarify a few things, we just need to think that Argentina is a country where people do have their savings in foreign currency, which generates a lot of stress, not only people but also companies. they have their savings in US dollars, which generates an extra push in demand for their central bank's reserves. So this is quite chaotic in general, and it's not comparable to any other country. The Libertarian administration started in December 2023 with an anti-inflation program, which revalued the local currency, the peso, causing prices to be very expensive for the Argentinians and salaries below the poverty level. So this country has become a very cheap country in US dollars for foreigners to a very, very, very expensive, even more than the US or Spain, just to have a reference in some industries. So the country has become completely expensive, and a lot of Argentinians are starting. Yeah, sorry.
Sir, Milei has embraced radical fiscal austerity. Do you see this as a credible strategy, or does it risk political and social backlash?
Yes, in general, the problem has been a political and social backlash because the government lost in the most populated province in the country, which is Buenos Aires province, which almost 40% of the population of the country. They lost dramatically the elections over there. And now Mr. Trump is helping as an aid to the president to calm the markets. He sending him US dollars from the US Treasury to relieve the stress of the markets and the investor markets.
Sir, markets are deeply skeptical despite strong US support. Why hasn't international backing been enough to restore confidence, sir?
Well, because this is the third time Mr. Milei and the fourth time Argentina requires financial international assistance to promote our economic programs. In the IMF in 2019,
yes, sir, but supposedly Argentina was one of the poorest countries globally, economically, and had big problems.
Yes, but however, the IMF lent Argentina excessive money rather than its quota in the IMF. So there's an excessive loans to help Argentinians.
So despite the money that was taken by Argentina from the International Monetary Fund, it's not yet enough, or it was embezzled, for example?
Generally, the entire loan was used to finance capital flow from outside the country, especially after the Peronist won the elections.
Outside the country to do what, sir?
Sorry?
Do what outside the country?
I mean, the capital flowed away from the country in 2019 when Peronists won the elections. To avoid to repeat that scenario after the Peronists won in the Buenos Aires province, the US is giving another loan to Argentina. That's why the investors do not completely trust this new program, because again, Argentina is asking for money to help the investors stay in the country rather than having a genuine growth.
So I got your point, sir. The money went out of Argentina, and the investors don't trust investing in Argentina. The FT argues Argentina must float its currency immediately. What are the risks and rewards of such a move at this stage, sir?
Well, as I was mentioning at the beginning, Argentina has an extra demand for US currency than other countries, so that generates a lot of demand. With excessive demand, the prices get higher, and that impacts in the local industry because many of the components are from imported goods. That generates more inflation. More inflation leads to unpopularity, and unpopularity leads to losing the elections. So what investors see is that if you're not able to keep stability in the currency, inflation gets higher, and you're not able to sustain your political reform, your free market political reforms. That's the main issue.
Sir, true what you're saying, but you need, I think, sir, inflation to solve some of the problems. We have to face, sometimes the country has to face hardships to get out of this big problem that it's indulged in now at this point. So how do you read it?
So I would say the country has been
It's
through
either
enough
or.
hardships. Sorry.
It's either or to get out of this big crisis.
So I think the country has been through a lot of hardships in the last 6 years. Many governments weren't able to keep their promises of reactivating the economy and helping the poorest. So that's why I think that all the last three administration lost the elections, and the presidency elections, like Mauricio Macri or President Alberto Fernandez. So this is a very hard place to be at right now, because there's no clear future of how Argentina is going to have international reserves to be able to pay our debt and also to keep a flowing economy rather than staying permanently in a permanent recession.
Sir, how significant is Mali's political weakness after poor local election results? And could Peronism realistically to return to power in 2027?
Well, it's not clear who would be the main figure. Many analysts think of the governor of Buenos Aires province, Axel Kicillof, but Cristina Kirchner is now on jail and she's not able to run for president again. She's not even able to vote, according to the justice. So that's a hard place, because internally Peronism has to relieve their internal discussions, but it's competitive. Peronism has kept competitive rather than the libertarians that have seen their political strength become weaker, especially in the biggest district, that is Buenos Aires province.
Okay, sir. Could Mali's outsider persona, once his greatest asset, become a liability if he fails to shift into a more pragmatic governing role?
Well, internally, he's not perceived as an outsider anymore, rather than a traditional politician.
Mali is not perceived as an outsider anymore?
Right now, not in Argentina. Right now, he's not perceived as an outsider, as his recent corruption scandals has paired him with the traditional political establishment. The corruption scandal and stealing money from the disabled has made people reject him, and that's partially why he lost the provincial elections. People don't perceive him as an outsider anymore, internally and internationally neither, because of the Libra scandal, where he's accused of scamming a lot of international investors by promoting a fake cryptocurrency.
Sir, Argentina's crisis has global implications, from emerging market stability to US-Latin America relations. How closely are Washington and others watching?
Well, right now, very closely, as Washington has decided to lend Argentina another loan of $20 billion loan. There's an internal struggle between the U.S. and China in this case, which is quite curious, because the U.S. is intending to reduce Chinese influence. However, especially all the medium and high class in Argentina are importing a lot of Chinese goods from traditional apps like Temu or Alibaba. So the US dollars that the United States are going to lend Argentina are mainly going to go away through purchases in Temu, or right now, for example, the government has reduced the export tariffs they had on soybean. And China saw this as an opportunity, and they bought four entire boats of Chinese soybean, which angered a lot of the U.S. farmers, because they lost an opportunity against Argentinians. So there's a very unclear situation, I think, of how deeply China is invested in Argentina and how they can take advantage of the situation. And I think the U.S. is not acting strategically. The two days forward, the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, had to internationally say that Argentina won't keep the current relief on export tariffs, because they were reduced in 2 days. And in 2 days, Chinese bought all the stock of soybean in Argentina.
Tobias Bulgarano, thank you for joining us and for sharing your analysis on Argentina's path forward. Tonight's discussions highlight two very different but equally pressing challenges: America's unpredictable gambit in Afghanistan and Argentina's struggle to rewrite its economic destiny. Both reveal how fragile global stability can be when strategy collides with political theater. This has been In Focus. Thank you very much for joining us, and stay tuned for more updates coming up on Q News. I'm Rana Qassas. Thank you very much for watching.